The unsurpassed, penetrating, and perfect truth is seldom met with, even in 100,000 myriad kalpas. Now we can see and hear it. We can remember and accept it. I vow to make the Buddha's truth one with myself. Homage to the Buddha, homage to the Dharma, homage to the Sangha. Okay, so as my usual pattern, I start off with a handful of ideas, and then I put them into the mixer. Another group comes out. Well, that happens to me more than I care to tell you. So it makes me a little nervous about coming up here, because everything I have to say is there, and I want to say it. But I pray that it's, how to pray? I would like to think that it's I've cooked it a little bit. So we'll see where we go. What's come up for me to as an overriding topic today is hearing the Dharma. We all, you hear the Dharma, that I assume that introductory retreat people and you Vietnamese who have been training for probably your whole lives have heard the Dharma. And a first step usually is to take it in and, think about it and say, well, I don't know, weigh it, this and that, what resonates with you. But what I want to help clarify is to take it out of our heads and put it into our hearts. In other words, to make it something that's alive for us, rather than intellectual has its place for sure, but practicing it is a whole different thing. And that's where it becomes valuable. But it's all voluntary. Valuable is an offering that is there of the Dharma. And I can say that is true. It's up to you whether that makes sense to you or not. So what I thought I would do is to have a few examples of the Dharma. These glasses aren't helping me out too much. So, the first part is, we just did a transfer of merit ceremony, and the first scripture that we recited was for Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva, which is the Bodhisattva of compassion. And I was thinking, there's a lot of good teaching in there about compassion, that's what it was. And I got to thinking, how do we take something like that? Oh, here, I had a verse that struck me. When people hear her name and see her form, and think of her not vainly in their hearts, all forms of ill in all the world shall cease. That's a nice phrase. I like to hear that. And it's from Avalokiteshvara. And I think that is a tall order. And it gives me hope and inspiration that perhaps the world doesn't have to be quite as whatever we make it out to be. Maybe there's another alternative. And this is what this offers me, one thing. And so there's a story here too. Oops. I have to be careful with that. And that is, what I want to point out is that the Dharma is for others and it's for ourselves. And what happened with this particular Bodhisattva, Avalokiteshvara, is that we had, years ago, there was a woman who called us and needed help. And so part of what we do is offer help or offer compassion to people. And she was in a very, very difficult situation that was just hard to fathom, almost. And so I think a number of us decided that, well, I think, I don't know who started the whole thing, but what we did is she got somehow latched on to repeating the name of Avalokiteshvara. She couldn't say it very well. So it came out like her own version of Avalokiteshvara, which is kind of a mouthful. No matter how many times we'd spell it out or say it over, and she would say it, but she would say it in her own particular way. But she had to take a trip across country by herself with her cats, with a difficult situation. And she kept up repeating, I'm not going to be able to tell you how she said it, but it wasn't Avalokiteshvara. She just stumbled on it every single time, again and again, and that was her mantra. And I believe that's what helped her get to to get to Mount Shasta. She made it here by herself. And it was something that we offered her, and she picked it up. And for years we had phone calls with her, and she said, I'm still reciting, Avalokiteshvara, Avalokiteshvara, however she would say. It was very characteristic. So we made the offering of compassion to her and advice. And I thought, well, how do we relate that to ourselves? And I think, I think I could say that I don't recite the name of Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva, but I certainly am exploring and on the path of discovering what compassion is. And scriptures like this help me to remember that that is what we are doing, what I am doing, and I appreciate that. And it's heartfelt. It's not something I'm trying to analyze in my brain, like, should I do this, or should I do that, or do I like this? It's just compassion. What does that mean? What does that mean? I don't know. Because it changes and shifts. Life is very fluid, and sometimes it means one thing and sometimes it means another, but I'm willing to keep looking at it. And that's one of the points of this talk, is to be open and to be heartfelt. Difficult times we have, but this is what the Dharma offers us. So that's one story. And then here's one of my stories that, I'll give it a go. I would have to say that the times are pretty confusing. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on that just doesn't make sense, okay? And what happens sometimes to me is I get overwhelmed by what's good to do, or what is going on. It's just I'm in a spot where I don't know. I kind of go, okay, this is what we've got, and I'm just not able to have a clear pathway. So one thing is I looked up the word overwhelm, and for those of us who don't know words very well, did you know that whelm is a word? Not over or underwhelm, but whelm. And it's an old one. I think they related it to like maybe a couple hundred years ago, but it's there. And what it means, this is overwhelm, and I can relate it to what I was going through. It means to cover up. Isn't that an interesting idea? So when you get overwhelmed, you're covering up something. It says in the dictionary, it said, and usually it's with disastrous effects. Okay, and I can say, yeah, I get that, yeah. So I want to relate a story that happened to me umpteen years ago, like maybe 60 years ago, when I was 17 years old. Hard to believe I was still that age. But my grandmother decided that my sister and I should be educated and took us to England, and we went around to all these places that we got educated. She was a sweetheart, and she wasn't rich or anything, but she was intent on showing my sister and I there. So we did that 6 weeks, and we were standing in front of a museum in London, and I don't know what museum it was, but it was a famous one. And just standing there, the three of us, and there was this construction wall that had been built because they were doing construction behind it. And it was a wooden thing, but it was big and it was really long. And so we're just standing there, I don't know what we were doing, but we were just standing there. And the wall fell down. And so people were walking along the sidewalk, and they were pinned underneath it. And it was like, so it happened right then, and I was 17 years old. I did not know what to do. I just was in shock. I could not move forward. I was frozen. Okay, fair enough. 17 years old. And so, and then, people just rushed in, and I was clueless. And I felt really bad after that there was something in me that, couldn't I do something? But it wasn't like, there wasn't there. I did not know what to do. I was overwhelmed completely. And I just remembered that. The reason I'm telling you that is because, let's see, what I did is I made a resolution. I said, if this ever happens again, I'm going to know what to do. 17 years old. I can't believe I coughed that one, but I did. So over my life, I have, overwhelm is something that I have, I visit now and then. It's just part of my makeup. It's like I just don't know what to do. And I have, I can go into panic mode, or I can just let it go. And what I have found over the years is that I have learned what to do because I wanted to. And that is, a lot of it is just not believing the overwhelm and just letting it have its due, but not to buy into it so much. And within that, guess what that creates is some space, right? And that's what our practice can help us with, is to slow down, stop, and say, well, I don't think I'm going to, well, first of all, I'll say, you know what? You do know what to do. And I believe, I'm starting to believe that, so I'm working with that. But I do know what to do. What is it? I always don't know. So I'm just really quiet, and I think, what is good to do here? And in that moment, I can see that some other pathway opens up. And it's not like it's some miracle, or that I have some grand, idea, that I'm going to help out, or I'm going to be wonderful, or anything like that. It's just simply all I need. What's the next step? That's all. And it can be really mundane, like pick up the piece of paper that tells you the information, and you can, sort it out from the other papers. Really simple stuff. And then I can take it the next step, and the next step. And that's how I work my way out of things, because I don't know what to do. And it's like I'm really clueless. I'm just sitting there in this kind of frozen world that that's my karma, and I'm willing to work through that. So I have learned over the years how to do that, and I have become more confident that I can actually step in emergency situations and do what needs to be done. Not anything heroic, I don't think there's a lot of ideas, but it's just simply putting myself in a place where I can take the next step. If somebody's hurting, I'm not going to shy away from that, but I'm going to step right in and see what needs to be done. I'm not going to get into rescue mode or any kind of thing like that. It's more like, what needs to be done here? What needs to be done over and over? And that includes, everybody. It's not about me. It's just what needs to be done to the situation. What can we do? So I'm grateful for that. 17-year-old, can't believe it, mind that came up with that so many years ago. But, it stayed with me. So that's another story of learning how to take something that is difficult or ununderstandable and making it over years. I mean, this has been 60 years ago, making it into something that is a tool. I can use it now, and it becomes more and more reliable. I was going to say Buddha willing, but life challenges me frequently too. So that's another part of taking the practice out of my head or overwhelmed and putting it into Buddhist practice. All right, okay. Quench my thirst here. All right, now, let's see here. I have another one here. Oh, yes. So here's another example, and I just find this inspiring. Here we have Saturday Dharma talks, and we've been doing them on Zoom since, during COVID we picked that up. So we've been doing that, sometimes with people that are visiting us too. But we had one, I think, about a week ago, and I got to do that. And what came out of it was something remarkable. Well, let me tell you what happened. So what happened was we were talking about Dharma practice. What is something that means something to you? And there were two examples that I'm going to share with you. One person, and I was asking, what is helpful to you in your own practice? So one person came up with the idea of, generosity. Nice term, generosity. And what she had found is she found that by giving to others, that she did it with such a heartfelt, open way that sometimes the reciprocation, not always, but every once in a while the reciprocation came together so two people were receiving and offering at the same time. In other words, the self got out of the way and it became something bigger, and it wasn't something she could grab onto, but she was encouraged that maybe this is a different way of giving and receiving. And isn't that wonderful? And isn't that something I'd like to learn how to cultivate? Not grab onto this situation. So that was her practice that she shared with us, that she found kind of like great, really helpful. And then another person raised her little yellow hand on Zoom and said, "Oh, I have something." So her thing was a little different. Her thing was impermanence. She said, "I have learned that impermanence is one of the Buddhist teaching, for sure. And what she has found is that impermanence is happening right now, and it includes everything." So in other words, the way she went with it, just of her own accord, was, I don't have to take everything so seriously. Why? Because it comes and it goes. So that was something that she took on and made it her practice, her heartfelt practice. And the thing that struck me about this is that I don't know how many people are at Zoom, but all these little pictures of all these people. And I said, look at all these people. They have their own practice, and it's seemingly different and maybe conflicting. And I thought, I wonder about that. So I started to think about the conflict between impermanence and generosity. And I thought, well, they don't really go together in my mind very well. However, what I came to is that what in these two situations, they were both women, did is they were willing to open their hearts to something different, something new. Generosity. Who would think that you could actually have something like that with the giving and the receiving kind of getting blurry? It was a moment, and then the impermanence, the same thing. Impermanence. Who wants to live with impermanence because we're so busy trying to latch on to things and make them into something more than they really are? And I thought, well, that person too, she was opening up to something different. And out of that came a view that was quite helpful, not to take things so seriously. And that's what you can say, for me, is like a Dharma door. We can keep finding these Dharma doors that are helpful. And each and every one of us, I think this is so incredible, has our own pathway, and it doesn't preclude what we're all trying to work together towards. And that is that we would know that we are not our problems in a certain kind of way. We suffer, but we don't have to be, that's not all that we are. There's something more. And I challenge you to find that out for yourselves. Because that is what it takes to get from out here to down here. So the last thing I was thinking about was we have excuse me. We have something called in an Udana scripture, and this is what I'm going to end with. And it says, "O monks, there is an unborn, undying, uncreated, unformed. Were it not so, there could be no end to birth, decay, disease, and death." So what I take to this is that I go, fine, that's a lot to, I don't know what to do with that. But if I sit still with it, all I can say is it's a mysterious thing that works because I've tried it and I know there is such a thing. Some part of me, yes, but can I stand on it, rely it, grab it in my hand and use it as a tool? No, you can't. You have to open up completely and say, okay, here I am, I'll do the best I can. And so that's my talk for today. Thank you very much.